Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call.
Road Commissioner Calhoun is absent today with prior notice. Drain Commissioner Christensen.
Present.
Road Commissioner Greenan.
Here.
Road Commissioner Joyce.
Here.
Road Commissioner Makowski.
Here.
Road Commissioner Popa.
Here. Okay, let's take a peek at the agenda. We have a written public comment that was handed out. Everybody has a copy of it. It refers to lake levels and whatnot. It looks like the agenda with sensor calibration, staff gauge at Narrows would be covering lake level topics pretty thoroughly there. So I'm not so sure we need to add anything with regard to the public comment. Thoughts on that? John,
You're still on the agenda, correct?
you need to,
You're still on the agenda, correct?
what's that?
There's three things I would like to add to the agenda.
Oh, okay.
We should discuss briefly the status of our ladder for the record.
That's an update. We're going to get an update on that.
I'd like to talk where we are on the budget with approval and stuff for next year. And is there any discussion on the walkway? And if you want to cover those all under updates.
We can cover it all in our updates. We'll have the ladder, the budget. What was the third one, John?
The walkway.
Oh, walkway. That's in budget. Okay. All right.
I move we accept the agenda as shown.
Second.
Moved and supported. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same? We have an agenda. Okay, let's take a peek at the minutes. I encouraged everyone to kind of skim through them before Allison got back to the computer. Thank you, Allison, for the minutes.
Yep, you're welcome.
It looked good to me.
Me too. I'm fine with that.
I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
John, go ahead.
I'll second it.
Okay. It's moved to approve the minutes as presented, and it's seconded. John?
On page 2 of the minutes of April 5th, this is not a correction to the minutes, but in bold there, it says it was a consensus to hold a special session meeting about the ladder bids. I think we held that meeting, but I don't know where the minutes are.
Well, we approved the minutes.
Yeah, the special session minutes were already done and
We
distributed and
approved
approved.
them
Quite a while ago.
July 5th.
Which if you look
Approval
here,
of minutes, April 26th.
July 5th, you have a copy right here.
So
Okay.
in July 5th, you'll see we approved the 26 minutes.
All right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. We have approved minutes. Thanks again, Allison. Okay. Now we're to public comment. We have a written public comment. It says from you. Would you like to come up and state your name and then probably read it, or just refer to it?
I just want to follow the rules.
Can you say your name for Allison?
Hi, I'm Dawn Lund. I live at 2458 Milton 2 Trail, Leland, Michigan.
You can sit down.
Do you have a time limit? I want to be respectful of your time.
But,
5 minutes? Can you
Yeah.
wait 5 minutes?
Yeah, I think 5 is fine.
Okay, perfect, great.
I don't know if we've had a public comment in recent memory, so.
No, so,
Allison,
For the BOC, hold it at 5 minutes.
okay,
I'll keep under that. Somebody just interrupt me if I go past that. So
I'll put the
thank you.
timer on.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for allowing me to speak today. I really appreciate all the work you guys do. I want to give a special thank you to John Popa for answering my questions and being very friendly and professional answering my questions in the past. However, if you recall, I first started mentioning to the authority in March of 2021 that the water level seemed very low to me. I have property on the south end, the north end, and the river. And just visually, I would notice that the water seemed very low. So since then, I've learned there's some tools out there to actually see what the water levels are, and that seem to support my suspicions that the water levels were low. That's what led me to sending the letter. If you have the letter in front of you, that's great. If you don't have the letter in front of you, we do have copies, or I'll just tell you what the letter says. So, if you look at Table 1 in the letter, it's actually a court order that helps determine or states what the level of the water should be and where it should be maintained. I want to specifically call out that the level should be 589.21 feet with a maximum fluctuation, and that's a key word here too I want to address, of plus 0 inches and minus 2 inches from April 15 or ice breakup until November 15. The order also indicates very clearly the level should be maintained at the site of the dam located in the village of Leland. There's a couple things to note here. One, that actual order is 58921. The variance of a minus 2, variance means occasional. It means you're not always going to hit the 58921, but that is the target that should be met most of the time. Also note that the order does not mention anything about lake average. I'm going to move on to talking about 3 sensors in the lake, and one more would probably represent the more average of the lake level. The order does not mention average lake levels. It specifically says level that shall be maintained at the site of the dam. So moving on, when we try to it's publicly on the Leelanau Lake Association website what the levels of the lake are. There are 3 sensors that they monitor. It's published on their website. If you go to Table 2 in the letter here, and if you don't have that, what that table is showing you is there's 3 sensors, one on the south end, one on the Narrows, and one on the dam. The south end is always higher than the Narrows and the dam, respectively. On the Leelanau Lake Association website, there are notes that specifically say the court-ordered levels are measured at the dam, the green line it's referred to in the graph. They also note the high and low levels in this graph, and you will see that the green line is consistently under that high and low. It's not within that box or within that range. Not only is this information that I put in here for last week's data, but this is not a new issue. If you actually go to Table 3, that is data right off the website from 2016. But when you look at that, I actually put some lines in there so you can see the high and the low. So visually you can see more easily to depict if that green line is falling within that box. You can see that that green line, which is the court-ordered level, has not hit that line since 2017. It has not fallen within that box since 2017. In fact, I want to point out that it appears the blue line is used more like the average, but the court order does not note a special relationship between the green line and the blue line. The court order specifically says the green line. Now, if there is any doubt to the sensor accuracy, there's also basically 2 measurements that are measuring at the dam per the court order. If you go to the next page, you will see there's basically tick marks, for lack of a better term, tick marks on the bridge that indicate the level of the water. You can actually go look at that level and go to the Leelanau Lake Association website and exactly correspond to the time and date when you look at the tick marks. You will see that on table 4A and B. You can see that on October 9th. I took a picture of the bridge tick marks, and I corresponded that with the Leelanau Association website. And those two correspond very closely, meaning the sensor seems to be accurate, since there's two measurements to be able to measure that level per the court order. When we move on and actually go to the next page and revisit the table on the previous page, you can see that there's a stain on the bridge that pretty much exactly corresponds to the court ordered level of 58921. There's a dark stain. You will see that that stain and thus the water level has moved greatly down from that previous stain. That would indicate that at one time the court order was being followed, and now the court order is not being followed. So I do want to mention this has definitely created a navigational hazard in the river. And I'm not asking you to listen to me as a property owner. I'm asking you to follow the court order as stated. And I appreciate you listening to me today, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Good morning. My name is Chris Lund. I also live at 458 North Community Trail in Leland, Michigan. First of all, I would like to thank you all for your dedication and commitment to this sort of task. I've been on boards, been on various committees. I've been a athletic coach for years, so I know sometimes it feels like you take the brunt of everyone's concerns, right? And I don't mean for me to be up here to be a complaining session. I just want to make sure that everyone is aware of this information that we have here today. So again, as Dawn mentioned, I think the area that's so clear to me is the chart on table 3 showing that lake level history. And you can see back in the 2016-2017 timeframe that the sensors, as recorded at the dam, were fluctuating at or near what we would interpret as that court mandate. You can then see into 2018 how that green line or that level at the dam started dropping. And then in the 2019 timeframe, that the target level that was maintained within that minimum window, as previously stated, became the sensor at the Narrows. When you look at the differential between those two lines, we took the average from the chart history yesterday, and they call it on the website the dam trend, the Narrows trend, and the South Lake trend. So I did not prove the math behind what they're using for the trends, but I just did simple math, and I said, what's the difference between the Narrows trend and the dam trend? Again, with the premise being that the charts indicate that the Narrows trend is what's being maintained for the lake levels versus the level at the dam, as measured at the dam. And from simple math, it appeared to me that the difference between the dam trend and the Narrows trend was about 2.52 inch differential. And if you further look at the court order, it recommends the target of that 589.21 feet, which is the zero mark on the charts. And within the court order, there's a variance allowed up to that -2. You can see the chart also shows a -2.5, which appears to be the minimum, sort of the target that the dam authority or that the dam has been targeted to run at. So not only is the wrong sensor being used, in my opinion, for the benchmark of what should be within that 0 to -2 range, but it's also being maintained at a -2 from that range. So you compound those two things, and the lake levels, from my simple math, say that on average, it's at least 3 inches low. And if you then consider that these do vary from each other based on rain, based on the flow of the river, based on the flow of the dam, we have personally experienced where the river appears to us, without using math or charts, that it appears to be as much as 6 inches low at times. So simple math from the data given suggests that it's at least consistently 3 inches low. With our practical experience, it seems that it continuously runs around 3 to 6 inches low. So I would just ask that the Dam Authority please review the court order and your interpretation of that order, and review the data, and look at your sensors and look at the elevation marks on the bridge in relation to your sensors, and get a sense that maybe there is an issue here, that the levels should be raised, and our calculations anywhere from 3 to 6 inches higher. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Any other public comment? This is a perfect time for your public comment. You know,
Okay. My name is Cal Kellen. I'm with the company TIA Software, and we maintain the sensors and the software and the graphs you see on the websites. There's some things that I think would be beneficial to the audience if they understood how water flows. If I could go to the chalkboard for 3 minutes, it would be a real help.
are there any markers there?
Doesn't work.
Doesn't work. I have a slide if you want to bring up a slide.
I can't from here.
Pardon me?
I can't do it from here.
Okay, I'll talk you through it. Water flows downhill. And so the water at South Lake, at the end of South Lake, is the highest water that you'll see in the whole system. And it flows from there down slightly all the way to the Narrows. So it drops an inch or two over that period of time. It depends on a lot of things. The Narrows is a Narrows, and it restricts water flow. And water flow runs fast through there to get to North Lake. And North Lake, as you suggested by looking at the graphs, is typically around 3 inches, 2.5 to 3 inches lower than South Lake as the sensors read out and as calibrated for the depth today. And that it was done last in 2015. The water then flows from North Lake downhill to the river, and a big downhill climb through the river to the dam. So there's drops of inches from the end of South Lake to the dam. If you open the dam, the river will drop tremendously. So it really depends on where the gates are set at and what the gates are trying to do, to remove water or to add water or keep water or whatever, flow water. So looking at the dam gauge from time to time, you're going to see variations, wide variations as Jerry moves the gates. And you have to also understand that the water levels at south and north and at the dam are never going to be close to each other. They're going to be inches apart. That's the end of my comments.
Thanks, Cal. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we can move on to communication items. I just made some copies of 2 documents and handed them out, and I think they are available. One is the order, which was referred to, which was drafted by prosecutor Larry Nelson, signed by Judge Forster. The other document is the court decision. And the court decision is what was made, and the court decision prompted the prosecutor to put together an order. So the basis of the order comes from the decision by the court. And those are interesting documents. I just wanted those to be available, especially to the Dam Authority, and we'll probably bump into those a little bit later.
Those will also be inserted into the minutes, a link to that, and they'll be available on the website.
Yeah. Okay. Any other communication items? Seeing none, down to discussion, potential action on purpose of meeting items. Number one, sensor calibration. John had put together a document, I don't know, we have copies of that available too, probably. But anyway, John did some research and went back through his files and put together the different measurements and calibrations that have been done over time with regard to the sensors, the staff gauge at the Narrows, the staff gauge at the dam, and
Sorry to interrupt. John gave me the calibration numbers in 2015. Unless someone has moved the sensor, and unless the calibration was wrong at that time, they were still calibrated, in my opinion. So I'd like to know what changed. I also want to explain that the bridge is where a staff gauge exists. The narrow sensor is hundreds of feet down the river from the bridge. You cannot calibrate the sensor at the Narrows from the bridge.
We're on the bridge in the,
Pardon me?
the tick marks we're referring to are on the bridge in Leelanau,
Not in the Narrows.
not in the Narrows.
All those vehicles are still the same.
well, let's not lose sight of where we're going. Cal has some interesting, this is not a discussion with the audience per se. Cal had some comments to make. He's there with John during the calibration. I think those are relevant.
I have not been with John during the calibration.
Well, I mean, for placement.
Okay, the placement.
For placement. Calibration was done.
The sensor in the Narrows, that's the place between North and South Lake. It is downriver from the bridge.
Right.
And the bridge is where the staff gauge is that sometimes is used for measuring water levels.
Right. John, maybe you could walk us through that just a different, quickly, and then.
Good, I'll try walking you through this. Once Steve called me here about a month ago about getting this data together, I went through a whole folder I had all the way back to when we installed them, when we calibrated them with Cal. And then there was 3 or 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 times we went out last year and went back and verified some of these. Now, for the audience, keep in mind what Cal said. These are sensors. We don't set that lake level by those sensors. That's just a tool. It's a real good tool. You can look when a storm comes through. But Jerry has a different method at the dam when he measures the actual lake level, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, but we'll raise that gate, and I'm gonna get into that. And then that is the reading at the dam. The sensors are close in some areas, but due to flow, like Cal said, and whatever, they're gonna vary. It's a good tool, especially when you get a couple inches of rain. It'll let you know what's going up and what's going down. So, back in 2017, we hired a surveyor, and we did it with GPS, and we went to the dam, we measured the top of the stick on the wall. It's supposed
The
to be at
staff
5.
gauge, let's call it the staff gauge.
Okay, the staff gauge. And we verified the top of this staff gauge from the Army Corps engineer, and we went all the way out to the disc on the break wall and brought it in. Then we used our own GPS. We measured it, and that's that dam 5417. And we concluded there that that stick is okay within staff gauge. I'm gonna keep saying stick, but that gauge is within a half inch, little ripples. That one was good. We did that right away. We went out on the Narrows, and the top of that staff gauge on the bridge was supposed to be at 590. There was a monument on that bridge, which has been removed. That was 607. We measured to the top of that staff gauge, and we found it to be a little bit low. Conclusion.
Is there a new monument on the bridge, John?
Yeah, and I'll get to that.
Okay.
And so we looked at that, and we said, hey, this gauge on the bridge is off a little bit, and the actual lake level is lower than that reading. And that was in 2017. Then we went to Birch Point. We put a brand new stake in the water. We measured to the top of...
October 17th. You said 2017, but it was October 17th of 21, right?
I'm on that first part, in 2017.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Vicki went around and we measured 3 different spots, and we paid her for this. And we drove a stake so we knew we had a reference point at the South Lake. And at that time, it's a measurement. So that's what we did back then. Then we had some questions to verify some of this. And so we hired the county engineer, and he went back to the Narrows, and we went to that monument was there, and we measured to the readings to the water. And we also concluded at that time that that staff gauge was off, and that was done about 3 weeks later. No, 3 months later, the same year. Then the bridge was gonna be replaced last year. And so I got to know the MDOT engineer, and he has a $30,000 piece of equipment. And we went to the Narrows, and we verified Vicky's reading to the top of that abutment, which was 589.45, and that's what Vicky had back then. We verified that. We went to Birch Point and measured the top of that stake to see if it changed in 4 years, and it hadn't. Her measurements there were the same, so that stake is different. And the monument after the bridge, which you questioned, is now 607.02. So that's the new monument. We did some measurements from that monument. But I didn't have them go down to the dam because that one was still okay. So then I looked at some informational meeting. I went out about 2 months later, and I went to the dam. I read the sensor. I read that gauge on the wall, and the sensor is right on to what the gauge shows. Went to Birch Point, measured to the water from that stake that's been verified and hasn't moved. That sensor seems to be reading too high. And then the Narrows, I went with Craig Brown from the county and did some measurements there. And that one seems to still be too high. The sensor's reading too high. But the gauge on the wall or the stick needs to be redone. With that was the history of what we think where we're at. I think our manual and visual lake level sticks at the Narrows should be adjusted or replaced. The manual visual lake level stick at the dam is okay. The iron stake at Birch Point is okay. The sensor at the dam is okay. And the 2 sensors that we had calibrated before, we probably gave a different input. And then once we get some of that straightened around, we might want to go back and adjust them. So if we were going to look at all this, what do we do tomorrow with your guys' input? I would say I'd like to get with Jerry and raise that dam up for a couple hours so that everything levels out, that everything in that lake is smooth, and what Cal says, the river flow and all that, and then we'll see where that lake level is. This is just my recommendation. And Jerry does this periodically. He'll raise the dam, stop the flow. It's not gonna affect anybody, the boating's done. And then go read that gauge on the outside of the wall at the dam, which we've done before. Measure to the water surface, because there's an X by that sheet piling. We can measure that, see how that, make sure that sensor is. While the gate is up, I think we should go back and measure the surface at the bridge. And there's an X on the bridge just above the gauge on the abutment that was surveyed. But I want to get Craig out there, again, the engineer from our new thing, and measure to that spot and make sure we're measuring things right. And then replace that stick on the bridge abutment to the correct elevation from this new monument.
So hold on just a second. I see, Cal, you're kind of shaking your head, and I kind of want to know what you're thinking.
Let's let John finish up.
And we should readjust that gauge stick on the bridge and then recalibrate that sensor and recalibrate the vertical point sensor. That's the action item. The only thing in this action items I didn't have in here was to get Craig out there to go back and get a reading from that monument back down there again.
From the monument, from where to
The
where?
new monument on the bridge with the surveyor, go measure that stick again so that we know just the final
The
time.
staff gauge,
Yes.
basically, so that would be
It verify
You'd
what
be
Dickie
using
said and it verify what the state.
that'd be using standard survey equipment, a transit,
Right, which Jim has done and whatever.
with the transit there at the
Yeah,
end.
you can get a good measurement there at the bridge one more time if we're gonna readjust that gauge.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think what we're looking at is probably some recalibration using standard survey equipment.
Some of the stuff that you're talking about, that it's off, how long have you known that it's off?
About 3 years.
So,
But we use these as a tool. Cal's put in there, it's real good. It tells us,
but I guess I'm not understanding, if we knew it was off for 3 years, why wasn't anything done with it?
well,
John's been doing some survey work.
Well-
The sensors were set back in
17.
16 is when we started.
16 and 17. So the sensors have been there a while.
Mr. Chairman, if I may too, if Cal, I mean.
Let me just finish. Okay, hang on.
Well, it just doesn't.
Hang on. The sensors were put in and calibrated, and the sensor information is set there for informational purposes to see when we have rise and fall. It's not there to specifically say to the dam operator, Jerry, I have to go up, I have to go down. Jerry is using a methodology that we will need, I believe, to model. He's been doing this for 40 years and has history from Ozzie Quarter's previous. So that modeling will need to get done. And I'm looking at recalibration of the South Lake sensor, recalibration of the Narrows sensor, and the item that is, I think, really key at this point is that staff gauge at the Narrows. That's an element that Jerry uses when he is manipulating the dam to go for the court order. Before we get to more questions, just going to make a real quick comment on court order and court decision. In the court decision, they refer to the level of the waters of Lake Leelanau repeatedly. So the numbers that it's set for is the level of the waters of Lake Leelanau. And in the decision, I'm just going to get down to just the comment I want to make. This report recommended the water surface be set at its present elevation, 589.21, as established by the Leelanau County Surveyor on July 25th, 1978, with a maximum fluctuation of 0 and -2 during the period from April 15th at ice breakup, whichever is later, to November 15th of each year. Elevation 589.21 corresponds to a reading of 6.55 feet on the gauge at the existing dam and was the water surface elevation at the time of public inquiries. Referring to the water surface elevation, there's a correlation, a correspondence between the surface waters of Lake Leelanau and what the reading is at the dam. So the decision was to have the level of the waters of Lake Leelanau be at a certain position, and it corresponded to a certain number at the dam. So really what we're looking at is the level of the lake. And that's where Jerry has been manipulating to get to. So you've got a lake, like Cal said, you've got the south end is here, the narrows are here, the north end's here, and the dam is here. On occasion, the dam comes up and we can get a feel for what's going on, but in reality, we've got a river, a dozen streams, probably 50 springs, all pumping water heavily into the lake. So bringing the dam up at the dam will give us a sense of a reading, but the lake level is between the south end, the narrows, and the north. And that's the conundrum that we're stuck with to try to satisfy the court order as to manipulations. So that's a lot, but I just wanted to make those comments. And what we're stuck with is manipulating the dam to get a court-ordered lake level. And it's the lake level, not the river level. And like Cal said, when Jerry opens up that dam to dump water, which he has to do on a lot of occasions because of flooding on the very south end, then the river drops. And that reading goes way down. And then he brings it back up, and he has to be in a position where when we get more water, he can let it down and get that lake level where the court order wanted it. This last year was horribly dry, and Jerry is thinking we're going to get rain. We're all thinking we're going to get rain. We didn't get any rain, basically. And we've had last year was dry, this year was horribly dry. So the question is, was the lake level a bit low? And to what level was it low? So that's, I think, what we're up against at this point in time. And I think, we should be thinking about recommendations of recalibration and maybe even resetting that staff gauge at the narrows. So anyway, that's a lot, but we can go on now with comments and questions, and go ahead, John.
I want to answer Bob. He brought up, why didn't we do anything? When I brought it up in our minutes, where are we on this and that and whatever? And I says, well, I think our sensors are a little out of what they should be. But I mentioned then also, I said, they're going to be replacing that bridge in 2021. And let's not do anything until we get a new monument set that the state verifies. The other one was set by meets and bounds way back, 44, even though it was close. But the new monument in there, I wanted to wait till this year until we did anything. We went to that new monument and took some new, so that was a lot of reasons, Bob, we didn't go do it. And then he said, also, these sensors are tracking pretty good, and it's a good tracking tool. It isn't the one we set the thing. Jerry does that at the dam by other methods. But it does give us a good flavor of when it rains and when it pours, and it's a good tool. And we'll leave it. But that's why we didn't take any action 2 years ago when I brought it up.
I still want to hear what Cal has to say.
Oh, yeah.
A couple things. One,
Well, why don't you come on up, Cal, and maybe do a brief.
all right, this
Cal, you can sit down so you can go into the speaker.
Yeah, there's a
please.
speaker.
Sensors in the software and equipment deployed at several places in Leelanau County and Great Traverse County and Benzie County. So Crystal Lake has some, Glen Lake has a few. We've got at Lime, Traverse, Little Traverse Lake, at Shawty Creek, we've got at Duck Lake, we've got at Green Lake. So a lot of people are using these sensors. And just from my company, and there's, of course, thousands of those sensors around the U.S., of course. The sensors are accurate, very accurate. Some, certainly within tenth of an inch, if not 100th of an inch. They're far more sensitive than you really need to manage your life. And they don't mess up. So unless somebody had moved the sensor, whatever we sent the sensor to as an elevation when they were calibrated, it's still calibrated. So I'm disturbed to hear that the calibration is wrong.
It is.
I'm confused about having a calibration have anything to do with the staff gauge on the bridge. They are apart, they're different things, they're different places, they can't be the same. And so I agree with Steve, we need to recalibrate. I think I would like to be at those calibrations to make sure that what I expect is being done, and I can stand behind it. Because I'm concerned that people are thinking that the sensors could be at fault, or the equipment, or the service that TIA software provides. Thank you.
Are we allowed to have public comment like Cal just did? This is that public comment period.
There is another public comment period. Cal is an employee, basically. We hire him and his company to work for us.
I just didn't see it on the agenda, so, yeah, thank you.
But you will, yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Garth.
I've got a couple comments on this. I have worked with those types of sensors before over my 40 years of engineering background. And generally, they don't go out of calibration. They're very accurate. What I see here is the court order only specifies one location to measure the lake level, and that's at the dam. It does have, during the decision of the court, does make some recommendations. One is dredging the narrow section. But one thing that I didn't see in here was any mention of dredging the river from the lake to the dam, and the Dunn's letter indicates that they thought that's been filled in. If that's the case, whenever you have flow and you have a smaller cross section on a river, you're going to have more head loss. So I think the data show that the level of the dam is lower than what the court order indicates. I think there could be additional head loss coming between the lake and the dam because of the reduced cross section of the river itself. So increasing the level at the dam could increase or will increase the elevation at the Narrows and the South Lake higher than what is traditionally known as the lake level. I guess I would say that we need to stay in compliance with the court order, which means raising the level of the dam, but I think that may put the elevation of the water up at the Narrows in the lake itself higher than what the court actually desired.
Yeah, it's a conundrum. Are we? Yeah, I agree. The court is talking about the level of the lake.
Yeah.
And we have to use the dam to keep the level of the lake at a certain level.
Correct. And the elevation of the water at the dam reflects the river, not necessarily the lake in general.
Dramatically.
Yeah. And if the lake had, depending, I don't know how much it's filled in since 1978 when the corridor was made, but if it's substantially reduced capacity of the river itself, it's going to have significantly more, significant, in this case, when we're talking about an inch or two, significantly more head loss than you would have had in 1978.
Yeah, and I think having the sensors and having this whole discussion, I think, is relevant to, do we need to do something at the river? When we built the dam, rebuilt the dam, went into service '06. When I came on board in 2000, that was the order on my desk to fix your dam. And it took us from 2000 to 2006 to do the redo of the dam. At that point in time, we knew the river has, and it's just gotten worse. The river had serious navigational problems. And what our thought was at that point in time was, should we be thinking about maybe dredging the river? The Narrows had been dredged 25 years previously. We didn't really know the status of the Narrows, and that same court decision and court order, the dredge was ordered also. So, what do we do next kind of thing? And what we did is we had our engineer who designed the dam do a study of the river, and the question that we needed to ask, really the only question, we couldn't do a navigational question, we could do, is the river functional for the design of the dam? And the design of the dam is a 200-year event, and can it handle a 200-year event? So the engineer went all the way up through the river and did his cross sections from near the dam all the way up to the lake, and did his study what would happen during a 200-year event. And with that size of an event, he said there'd be no problem with the flow passing through the river that would flush the river quite a bit. There'd be sediment into the lake, and the dam would be able to handle all of that, and it would function. So it was functional for a 200-year event. And to be honest, I was disappointed because I thought dredging the river would be a good thing at that point in time, and it would have been a good thing, but we couldn't justify it with the project. So it didn't fit in the scope of the redo of the dam. So it wasn't done. So what did we do at that point in time? And in my mind, and the Dam Authority at that point in time thought, well, the best thing that we could do would be to do some kind of a hydrologic study, because just going to the County Board of Commissioners and saying gut level, I think we need to dredge this or dredge that, and we're talking, an awful lot of money to do dredging. And there's all the permitting, and it's an enormous project to even think about, and then to do would be horribly expensive. And the county commissioners wouldn't just give money on a gut level, so we thought, let's do a hydrologic study. So we went through the steps to figure out what we would want to ask. So we got that figured out, and we went out and basically went out for bids on a hydrologic study, and came back, and we chose a company to do a hydrologic study. And the county board operates in a meet this week in a work session, or meet this second week for the final session. The first session, we offered that company to do a hydrologic study, and it passed. We went to the second week, and it didn't pass. So that at the regular board meeting the second week, the hydrologic study did not pass. So at that point in time, we went back to the drawing board basically, and I'd been working on the tech committee at Glen Lake by court order to satisfy levels of Glen Lake and the Crystal River. That went through a court proceeding, and the judge ordered quite a group of people to sit at the table and you sit down and figure it out. And so I was on the list, so I was there at the first meeting, and I'm still there. But I got to know Cal at a certain point in time, and his group over at Glen Lake is an extraordinarily talented group. We do have a similar arrangement around Lake Leelanau. Actually, all of the lakes in northwest Michigan have a pretty good representation of retired engineers. So Cal got involved and developed his company, and the sensors really got their first test in Glen Lake, and Cal has upgraded hardware, I think 4 times, and he's updated software at least that many times. I feel real comfortable with where he's going, what he's doing. And we thought, well, let's have sensors in Lake Leelanau. Let's be data driven and get some data so we can have a discussion and see where the discussion leads with the data we have. The data from the sensors won't go away. The only thing I could think of with the sensors, Cal, is if it's a muddy, murky bottom where they were set, did they settle some? And that's the only thing I could come up with where they would be off, so to speak. Or, you know, if an anchor caught them and dragged them, I don't know. But so recalibrating the sensors, I think, is a good thing. We've got great data. If we recalibrate, we can preserve all of that data. We can have Cal redo the formulas and have the old data and have the new data. We still have data to work with. It isn't bad data. It might need to be adjusted, but we have our data. And the questions and the discussion about the river, and we're getting back to hydrologic flow. And that's going to be part of our discussion from this day forward. And when we go to the County Board of Commissioners, we'll have data. We can talk about flow rates, and we can talk about a situation with data. And I'm feeling really good about that. And I'm anxious to get that staff gauge at the Narrows placed at the proper location, because that's really key with what Jerry does in the manipulation of the dam and keeping the lake level at the proper spot. I babbled on incessantly long, but I think you needed to hear some of the background that's happened over the last 22 years.
I don't think there's anything wrong with the sensors at all. They're a good tool. Looking at some of the information we gathered off of them, they work very good. If, I was looking at some numbers on this chart here, if we put some new calibration in it, if you want to call it, that blue line, or the one at the South Lake and the one at the Narrows, are going to be right on top of each other. And we can try it and see how we like it, but they're going to be real close. I looked a couple times this summer, and they were the same levels, measuring from here and measuring from there. And if you subtract this and add that, they come pretty close, except during big events. And if Cal and I and whoever wants to go around and do it, the first thing I want to do is get a new survey at the bridge that we can measure from, verify the top of that stake, and verify.
I think we're at a point where we could think about where we need to go with this. I think we need a surveyor.
Well, I can get the county surveyor, and we can
I
go.
talked with Craig.
Yeah, we can go off that new monument.
That would be transit survey.
Well, that's fine.
And transit survey, I think, is something that Cal would be really in favor of transit survey, and that would be, we need a surveyor for sure. And then, oh gosh, I'd entertain a motion that talks about getting a surveyor involved and getting maybe John, Cal, and me troop around and I know Cal wants to be there, I know John wants to be there, I want to be there. We can't have a quorum present, but we could have a representative group of people from this dam authority, and Cal, of course, he's the censor, he does the censors for us, and then a surveyor. I don't know, I'd entertain a motion that would incorporate something like that, and maybe name the staff gauge at the Narrows, the Narrow sensors, and the South sensor.
I don't think we need to go hire somebody. The same transit that we use at the county is good, and we can have the county do that and do our transit work. And Jim verified it against the GPS coming all the way from out by the pier and brought it in, and him and Vicky's numbers were within a fraction of an inch.
Well, I think a county surveyor would be fine, I mean, so long as we have a surveyor that we can agree on, I'd entertain a motion to move this forward.
I'll make that motion, but I'd also want to add something to it, that if we're going to do that, we're also going to need to take a look at what's going on with the river. It would be two different motions, that's fine, but while we're still in this discussion.
Yeah, why don't we separate that out?
We
I
need
think
to
the
look at
river
that river.
discussion is a good one, and I think we need to head in that direction for sure. Let's make that a separate motion, and I don't know exactly what that one would sound like, but let's get the survey one out of the way first.
Well, I'll make a motion that that we go ahead with the survey of our sensors, including you and John and Cal. And then I guess anyone in the public sector would like to see how we're doing that. So we're very transparent.
They'll be able to see all of that for sure.
Yeah, I'll second that.
We have a motion.
To
We have
what? Get a
we have
surveyor
we
to
have
measure
support.
the one off the bridge, get that one finalized, right?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I think, it was open-ended. Allison?
I just need you to reword the motion for me, please.
I just said that I'll make the motion to survey our sensors, including you and John and Cal at the bridge.
And the staff gauge at the Narrows.
I said sensors.
All of them.
Yeah, plural.
Staff gauge and sensors.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we had support, and the support is still good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jerry had a question, Steve.
Jerry?
Regarding this, if there's a change,
Why didn't,
changes made on the gauges I'm talking about, because it's a court order, if there's any movement on those gauges, it cannot be done, correct, until the court approves it, correct?
that's a good
Those are set at court order.
we'll
If
have,
you move that gauge at all, then we're not, then we're going against the court order.
You're talking about the
I'm
staff
talking about the
gauges
staff
today.
gauges, yes, sir. Ones that I read.
yeah,
And also, for information, we got that 2 inches of rain a week or so ago. Under the bridge right now, it's at 9-1. And of course, it's calm, the wind picks up, depends what direction is going to change that level. The soccer field, or the ball diamonds, you see there, had water after we got that rain. Because it moved up from 9-1 to 9-3 on the bridge. Okay, so in turn, because of the water and also the wind forces water down the cedar, which in turn starts flooding ball diamonds, which is an indicator. So changing these numbers on the staff gauge, on the gauge, on the wall, is going to have an impact on other things. Even if it has to come into compliance with your GPS, okay, okay, there's other things that are gonna be affected. Let's say, you say it's low, that's fine, but I'm just physically, this is what's going on physically, not by numbers, or not by Mother Nature. This is, so I'm just saying, we make a change, which whatever you wanna do, I don't care. I'll put it where we have to deal with it, but I don't wanna get into trouble with the courts.
It's a good question. I'll take it to Chet. We'll have corporate take a squint at it. Good question. I mean,
I'd like to see, make sure that gauge is what's supposed to be.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, because the staff gauges are what Jerry uses and has used for 40 years to manipulate the lake level to be in compliance with the court order, and we're always going that way. This year, we were low the whole year, and I think a lot of people felt it was low. So
We gauges, I was in compliance, he was at 9 feet.
Right.
Bridge.
Right.
But I can check it in the morning, by afternoon, wind picks up, it's gonna change that.
Yeah, it's a big bathtub. Yeah.
I cannot, but keeping it on lower end gives me the chance to catch any water that we get out of end. If I keep it at the high end, then I'm putting zero.
Yeah, it's Jerry's at the pivot point, and if
Whatever it takes.
yeah, if he's at all high and we get a lot of water, it's a week to 2 weeks to have that level be back to court order. So he's at the pivot point, and to defend his position, he'd like to be a fuzz low because we keep getting rain events.
You say low, not under.
Not under the court order,
Minus nothing.
just on the down side of the court order.
Because that's the lake, that's halfway point before, yeah, it's basically, is where you maintain it at the dam, okay? But you don't read the lake level at the dam, because when you pull the plug in a bathtub, you don't say, well, that's how much water is in the bathtub, because it's gonna be low anyway.
Yeah, and the court understood that in the original wording. There's a correlation between the lake level and the measurement at the dam, and what they have for lake level was the lake level at that point in time. And we'd have to go back to the
We have
Brown and Root study to see.
And we
you know,
have a
where they-
motion on the table right now. But the other thing is I thought the motion was we were just surveying the sensors, just to see if they're where they need to be,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, that was it, just, and I'll, you know,
I mean, I agree with you guys, great, I just,
Yeah.
good comment, Jerry, thank you. I'm sorry, Bob, go ahead.
Okay, Bob made a motion,
It's been seconded.
and been seconded, and we should
Any
have a
other,
discussion on that
any other
motion.
discussion?
I do, in that Bob said at all 3 locations, but the one at the dam has been checked by Vicky and by Jim Johnson, and that stick hasn't moved.
But if we.
So I don't think we need to resurvey that and spend $300 and resurvey that.
So you're saying that the dam, it's been checked several times and hasn't moved and is in
Right.
compliance?
And the one at the South Lake, we checked it by DOT and by Vicky's, and that stake hasn't moved. And I don't want to spend more money doing that. And I'd like to have Bob's motion just say to survey the one at the bridge.
Well,
Well, see, here's the thing, $300 is nothing, that's minuscule when you're talking about hydrology, period. So I don't care how long ago it was, check it. If we're checking everything else, let's check
Checking the
one
sensor, or are
thing.
we resurveying those sticks on the wall?
We're gonna resurvey. Like I
well,
said, the
when
sensors.
Bob clarified
Mine was
his
for the-
motion,
For the sensors.
staff gauges and
Sensors will come
sensors.
later after we resurvey.
Said, Bob's comment was the sensors,
The
so
sensors.
staff gauges, Cal be involved, so when the survey crew is out there, we can have a timing and we can do sensors and staff gauges all at the same time, is my understanding.
To make it easy for everybody to understand, if you test the water level at a certain time of day, right close to my sensor, then that's all we need to do. We don't have to measure down to the sensor or anything else. The sensor will tell us how much water is above it. So the survey only has to test the level of the water right next to the sensor, not somewhere else. And then we tell me that time and that number, and it's calculated.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think the motion is clear. I think Bob's motion is staff gauges and sensors. All, right, Bob?
Yes.
Any other discussion?
Read the motion again.
Could you read the motion again, Allison?
It's to recommend to the Board of Commissioners to go ahead and survey all sensors and staff gauges.
I don't think it needs to be a reference to the County Board of Commissioners.
It needs to go, it's going to be a recommendation to them.
Okay, if it's not in the budget.
Correct.
Is that right? Yeah, well, okay.
I just don't agree with doing those other two, because
I
we just
know.
did them.
I know. It's, in a certain way, it's redundant, but I think
Because our
Bob's
next
point.
motion is gonna be to go out and raise the dam and recalibrate all cal sensors, if we wanna do that.
No, what?
What does that do?
Well,
I don't
the,
understand that at all.
well, I think we have a motion on the table,
We do. And
and it was seconded, and it's clarified. Second's good with it?
Yes.
We're going to recommend to the County Board of Commissioners to do this. Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
So, whoops, I'm sorry. I can't, how did I have this thing turned out? I apologize.
Now, the next motion should be to go check these levels now that everything's gonna be surveyed. And I think what Jerry does, he raises the dam and stops all the flow,
The,
and get that lake stagnant for an hour or two, and then go do these readings and see where they are.
Can I comment?
just a
I don't
second,
know.
just a second. We got the sensor calibration staff gauge at Narrows. We've rolled that in. We're into, I guess, more discussion about what happens when you raise the dam and what does it mean? And John, why don't you go ahead and
Well,
just start the discussion with what happens when you raise the dam?
Well, the entrance to the river is full of sand, and the people that live on it know that, and it's been causing a big concern over the last 20 years since we built the dam. And there are people that want it dredged. I'm not sure the county should pay for it, because they're only interested in maintaining that dam, and that's it. If we raise that level, or raise the dam, then, and we've done it before, you get a nice stagnant surface. And with that stagnant surface, you can see what the level of the dam is and how it meets the court order. And we can take a reading at the Narrows, we can take a reading at the South Lake if we want to, do what we want. We got stakes there and stuff. So I said we should raise the dam and leave it up for 2 hours, read the stick out there at the dam, measure it to the water surface by that sheet piling. There's an X there, you can measure all the way where the gauge is if you want to jump over that fence. While the gate is up, measure the water surface at the bridge, and then we'll know those 3 spots. And then we can either replace that stick some other time at the bridge, and then recalibrate according to all that stuff,
Any other comments with regard to raising the dam?
and taking these measurements.
Cal?
John's missing a few things on this. Number one, water continues to come into the lake, raising the dam for a couple hours, might level out the river. It does nothing to level out North Lake. doesn't even come close to getting to the Narrows or South Lake. If you left it up for a week, it still wouldn't have any effect on South Lake. South Lake would be building up water and water comes in. The lake level will not level out after 2 hours, or 2 weeks, or 2 years. Forever. That is not an accurate way of calibrating anything.
Any other comments on raising the dam?
It probably isn't, but once we get that stick measurement or something to the Narrows by a survey, I don't care what the dam is doing, we know what it is at this instant by the bridge, we measured it, whether it's lower here or higher there, and we can calibrate from our new measurement after we get that part surveyed again. And you can run down to Birch Point, measure from there. And I only mentioned about bringing that gate up because that'll tell us the true court-ordered lake level there at the dam.
Raising the dam at the gates at the dam settles out the water at the dam level, and as the court order appears, it takes away the falling down of the river when the gates are open, and it settles out, and you can read it. And that is evidently the appropriate way to read the quote lake level.
And that was the very first action to do after you raise the dam. Raise it up and then go read that stick on the outside wall. Write it down. With the gate up for a couple hours, that's what it reads. And how do we meet our intentions at that time?
Any other discussion about, Garth?
Yeah, I think part of it depends on what the intent of the judge was when he set the lake level. Obviously, the conditions have changed over time where there's probably more head loss going down the river now than there was originally. But when he set that lake level to be measured at the dam, there was some head loss already occurring in the river. There's head loss occurring anytime you have water flowing down the river. So, it seems to me that we could go, if we're out surveying the dam, we could survey the lake level near the mouth of the river. That'll tell us the amount of head loss in the river. And then, if need be, we could go back through the courts to see what the original intent was. Was it based actually at the dam, or is it based at the mouth of the river that would set an elevation for the lake itself?
John, do you have,
When you raise that dam, you can walk out there at that entrance and the water stops after a couple hours. It doesn't even move. And those people live on it. Once you raise it, there isn't that much volume in that river. You raise it and it just stops. There's just no flow. Zero.
No head loss.
No head loss, there's nothing. You don't have to then go
If
survey.
there's no flow, then it will seek a constant level.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
I've been measuring this for years and stuff.
but anyway,
And-
good comments. Good comments.
And this doesn't need a motion to
Well-
raise the dam and take measurements.
I think if we're going to raise the dam and do some readings, it would be important to have some framework for when we would do that. I think it's a data point, and it's a valuable data point. When do we do that, I guess, is the question, and that could be recorded. It's, as it is now, the dam is manipulated around events by Mother Nature. And with large events, doing a raise the dam and take a measurement would be different than at a time between events. So what time of the year do we do this? The court order, that all happened end of July, and Brown and Root did the study, and I think we probably still have a copy. John, you might even have a copy. But it looks to me like Brown and Root was looking at the level of the lake on July 25th, back when that order went through. It was the level of the lake, and could have been a pretty dry time, and it could have been a still day at the driest time of the year. So we put a lot of events in it. Is Jerry gonna pick that dam up after 5-inch rain and then see what it looks like, or is he gonna pick it up? See what I'm saying? I think the discussion is good. I think the data points are good that we would get, and we need to probably think about when those would happen and put some thought into it. It is my thought. It looks like we're going to probably end up keeping our next meeting, which is a regular meeting, and bring back to this group what the county board decides. I'm not sure if that fits.
What does the county board?
I don't know if that fits. Allison, when's our next meeting?
On the beginning of November.
And
It's
we're,
like November 5th, maybe, something like that.
so that really doesn't fit with a decision on the county board side, does it?
What does the county board have to do?
We're taking to the county board, that motion was to the county board to do the survey work.
I can get that done this next week or two.
I realize that, but we're gonna go through the county board. I think Allison's instinct on that, and what we're doing as a dam authority at this point in time, I think needs to go through county board. Allison?
Steve, I'm only saying that because normally when you guys make a motion, it is a recommendation. Most motions during the dam authority are recommendations, short of approval of minutes, setting meetings, that kind of thing. That's how everything else has gone. Whether you want to check with Chet on that, be my guest.
We may have it,
simply
we
how
may
we
have
run
money in the
board.
budget to be able to do this. We can touch base with Chet. Anyway, setting the next meeting is in the future, but I think, unless I'm all wet, raising the dam and taking readings, I think, is good. When to do it is another question. If the board, if the dam authority can give some direction to Jerry as to when to do that and when to take the readings, or maybe leave it to Jerry's discretion and have a certain number for the year, dry time, in between events. I think we need to, if we're going to be doing it, we should have some parameters. I don't know, thoughts. What do you think, guys?
Raising that dam, we can't do that until we fix the level at that gauge, although you could measure adjustments to it because we know about how far it's off, but we need to survey that stake so that we know where we're at. So when we raise the dam, we take these readings, we know what we're reading.
So recommendations for raising the dam and taking readings is maybe premature until we get the,
Might not be till next year.
until we get the measurements with the survey crew done.
Right,
Does that make sense?
right.
So we got that covered. I think the discussion, Bob, you were going to say something about the river. That whole discussion, I think, is something that we could have, and maybe.
I think it's something that we need to take to the board, maybe as a recommendation, that we do some study of the river to see what exactly is going on as far as sand and silt, navigationally, how bad is it?
I think the hydrologic study was, what we were heading on that was originally a discussion about both the Narrows and the river hydrologically. How does that affect us and our ability to hang with the court order? Is it hindering us? Is it helping us? Is it, what are we looking at here? And maybe we're heading back to a hydrologic study.
Because it's been, what, almost 20 years?
Well, Brown and Root, that was probably 40 years ago, or is it 50 years ago?
It was
No, that
in
was
the early
before.
70s,
Yeah,
if I can remember right.
yeah, that was, well, Brown and Root was involved before even the court order. That's 78, court order 78. Yeah, that's a long time ago.
I'd like to ask a question of Jerry.
Anyway,
Jerry, sometime when you take those legal dam readings, don't you raise the gate at that time? You don't? You just use that bubble in the wall, that glass?
That glass down there, the set glass,
Yeah.
that stays wherever it's set. Whenever I set it, to 29,
Okay.
29 feet.
So that's a staff gauge, blah, blah, blah.
You were going to make a comment about the river, Cal. I'd like to hear what that
Yeah,
was.
to be clear, the way I see it, dredging the river would help, would allow us to shed water faster. So it's not gonna help keep more water in the lake. It's just gonna allow us to operate the dam and get more water out without sinking boats in the river or throwing the neighbors to the outlet side of the dam overboard. So that's the reason I would, and the only reason I would dredge the river. Dredging the channel between North and South Lake would allow the lakes to become closer to being the same, but not, I don't know how much it would affect it, half an inch, probably not something that anybody would notice. So that's what the dredges would do, in my opinion.
That's interesting you brought up between the lake, because a couple of years ago, the county board asked a question about dredging the Narrows, because a lot of people wanted it dredged, and we wasted a lot of money in the 70s putting a boat path through there. And so I got a state drawing that took the cross-section, and I think they even brought it in front of the board, the cross-section of that river, and with trigonometry, you can figure that total area, which was about 6 times the area of our little dam, which is only 4 feet by whatever. And it was just looking at the flow, even for the 200-year flood, there wasn't more than an inch difference that bridge would restrict it, which was the most restrictive point compared to the whole floodplain each way was the abutments of the bridge. And so it doesn't stop it much. And then you go down at the dam and look at the CFM that goes over it, and you can get a pretty good idea, a little 6-inch flow that wide, and the water going under that bridge is less than 1 foot per second, so that water's stagnant, that whole thing. And the sensors kind of record that also. So the bridge isn't a big restriction, like Cal said, it's not much. If anything, it's just about stagnant. You throw a leaf in the water.
Mr. Chairman, looking at the court order, it doesn't specify what the dam, how the dam should be operated during the recording of that water level. So it may be appropriate to raise the dam and measure it, which would give us another data point in terms of how much impact the river itself is having on the legal water limit.
Good point, and I think that goes along with modeling what Jerry's doing, getting his 40 years of experience into some type of a model so that the next person that's going to manipulate the dam has that history and knows somewhat of what to do during very extreme events. So we need, I think that's another that'll fit in that, I think.
Yeah.
You know, that model, and getting data points that'll help that modeling is, I think, very important. I think for a motion, Bob, I think what we should do is probably get this survey work done and get our points clean, and then look at data. And I know navigationally, it's a no-brainer, but what we're going to do on the Dam Authority side with regard to holding lake level to court order is a little different hydrologic topic. So I think we need to put some thought in it, and that motion will come eventually. Let's get our points cleaned up at that. That's my take on it, I think.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
But I guess my biggest thing too is I wonder, you talk about a 200-year episode or a 200-year storm. Well, we've had 100, some say 150-year storm, what's going to happen when we get the 200-year storm? And I know that the river right now, with the amount of sand and silt and everything else, how much is that going to compound the situation, and what's that going to do to our dam?
Well, the dam was designed for a 200-year event, so
And I don't want to be the guy saying, well, it was designed for 200 years, but there it is, sitting down in Fishtown, you know what I
well,
mean?
the engineer laid a multiplier on it, so, and we just had our dam inspected, Spicer did it, and they're gonna have the report through theoretically this week. We're keeping up to snuff as far as inspections go, and the stoutness going in was extraordinary. I'm pretty confident on the dam itself.
I guess I'm just saying, as far as, I don't want to put the river on the back burner, if you will.
Got
I want that
it.
something, maybe to be, go under as old news or old business when we meet again. So we keep bringing
what?
this up.
Yeah, the hydrologic.
The hydrologic
I guess the hydrologic study topic will stay with us.
Now, to answer Bob's question about the dam, a 200-year flood, the dam will handle it, but we have to keep in mind it also included a 1-foot rise in the water level over the present dam. If you just lower the dam now, it takes so much, but a 200-year flood includes a 1-foot rise in the lake level.
Yeah, and I'm not just talking about the water aspect of it. I'm also talking sand, silt,
Yeah, he said it would all flush out. He said it's all gonna go in the Lake Michigan.
gamble.
That can be a different subject about this sand and silt.
Yeah, and I think, the
We
Dam
keep this
Authority
up,
did recommend a hydrologic study to the County Board of Commissioners at one point in time, and we went back and we did sensors, so we can have some data with us. Any other updates? Jerry, how about the ladder? You want to come on up and give us an update on the ladder?
Not really.
Regarding ladders, been powder coated, and Pat said they'd like to do it, put it in Monday. Weather issue is active, but we're looking at, I should say, Friday or Monday.
Okay.
Friday or Monday for what?
Put the ladder in.
To be installed?
Installation.
Oh, I didn't catch the word. Install it?
So
Okay,
that's what we're on.
great.
Just wanted to know.
Perfect.
I think that covers it. But we'll see how it goes.
Okay. Yeah.
Just trying to get it in there. So. That's all
Exactly.
one time, so.
Well, you can stay right there. We may have other questions.
It's close. It's close. Excellent. Thanks, Jared.
Thank you.
More updates?
I would like to know the budget, what was put in for next year, and does it include the walkway? You presented the stuff in April.
Walkway and roof.
Walkway, roof, plus you added a
I
contingency?
put 20% on the walkway, above and beyond what
That
was
quote?
given to us, and then 15,000 on the roof of the control room. That went in as budget items. Hasn't been approved yet, but it's
That's
in.
my next question. It passed the first screen test and everything, but they were supposed to vote on it and
I'm not too sure where the county is on budget. That got delayed. Normally, it would be this time of the year, but I think it's delayed into this next year, January.
it's,
Sometime at least later in the year or into January, or, no, it has to be done by the end of the year.
yeah,
So it got
But not
delayed.
October like it normally is.
correct. I think they're gonna do it like late November, December.
So I haven't presented in front of the board with respect to Dam Authority yet. And so whether or not they'll pull us in for that on the budget side, I don't know. They're working their way through the different departments.
So let's say it gets approved. Someone has to draft up some real quick RFPs and bid guidelines and stuff to go out for bid, and we should be talking about that. I was thinking of one, if we put something out, here's our ideas of what to do, but I think the bidder should say, here's what I would do. I'd put diamond studded railings up and I'd do this and do that, just like we did for the ladder. The guy came back and said, I'll do this for you, but I could also do it in stainless or something. So we should be working on this RFP so that the first of the year it goes out, so that the construction will get done next year.
I agree, we'll need to jump. Let's let the budget process happen. The next, I suppose that leads us into the next meeting date we have scheduled November what?
I believe it's the 5th. It's sometime that first week of November.
And the question is, does it make sense to keep it? We won't have any decision if it goes to the board. Do we keep, what is it? Let's see. There it is, November 1st. And that's, do we keep that to further our discussions?
What's the date?
November 1st. Is that what you have, Allison?
If that's what you have on, is it on the website?
It's,
Yes.
it's on the website? It's in
Yep,
my-
we
it's
said
in my
that
phone.
earlier in the year.
I got it 10 o'clock in the morning, Dan and BPW.
So, looks like maybe we should keep that meeting.
And cancel
There's a
BPW.
lot, there's a lot going on, so we probably should keep it and further our discussions and thought processes on where we go from here kind of thing. Comment?
Mr. Chairman, there is a road commission meeting Tuesday, November 1st at 9 a.m. So we may have to adjust time.
That one probably is harder to move than this one.
Well, if the chairman keeps it moving right along, we should be okay.
It could happen.
This one. Probably easier to move the road than it would be this thing.
Could we,
All the budget
could we
stuff.
move this to 10:30?
Did that work?
We should be able to do that.
Allison, is that a possibility?
If you want to repost your meetings, did you say there's a BPW meeting that morning too?
If we go to 10:30 instead of 10, it looks like that's going to fit with their previous meeting that day.
Did you not just say there was a BPW meeting that morning also?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything on the agenda for that? I don't believe so.
Okay, well, you guys are setting the meeting, so you tell me what you want to do and I will
What's
put it in the
Tuesday? If
schedule.
we run past Tuesday noon, what happens? Is it running into some budget stuff? Is it open till 1 o'clock?
They have been changing meetings every week, so currently I don't know.
Well, we've got the room. why don't we keep it, make it 10:30? Let's repost at 10:30.
Okay.
Is that good with everybody?
So you're changing the BPW also?
No,
You can't
no,
do that.
just the Dam Authority.
Just Dam Authority to 10:30.
Dam Authority to 10:30.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, done. November 1st, okay, we'll keep that. Is that it for updates? Brings us to public comment, sorry for the long wait.
Again, Dawn Lund. Thank you so much for that discussion today. What I basically heard was that the sensors, both from John and Cal, that the sensors are correct. I appreciate the discussion on the flow of water. I understand the flow of water. The point still is the way the order is written, it's still as measured at the dam. We've had a lot of discussion on the narrows. I understand the discussions. I understand the flow of the water. I've also heard that you're in a real conundrum because you don't know how to interpret, is it the lake level or as the order was written. So I have a solution to that. We can actually get that interpreted, and I believe the order is very clear on where that measurement should be. And I've also heard, throughout this whole period that the sensors are correct from both Cal and John. So I'm actually not understanding why the discussion is centering around the narrows. And I'm very sensitive to the people on the south end of the lake. I own property on the south end of the lake. I feel for the ones that have built in the lowlands and made that decision to do that. But that's not what today's discussion is about. There's also, I'm sure, equally as many people on the south end that want the level raised, particularly along Lakeview Drive. If you take that area of the lake, that level is very low. We have friends that live there. Many of their neighbors want that level met for the court order level to raise that. The very south end of the lake is also very low. The homes on the very south end of the lake, we have friends there as well. So I think I'm sure there are a portion of the south end that are very concerned about their wetlands that they've built in, and I can appreciate and understand that. But again, all of this circles back to what we are asking the authority to do is to follow the court order as written, which is keep the level as measured at the dam. And again, I can appreciate all the conversation about the water flow, but that's not how the level is written. And I can appreciate Mr. Christensen's comment of he doesn't believe that's how the court interpreted it. I'm not sure if you're an attorney. I'm not sure if you were there during when the court made that decision, but I think that we can have actually an attorney interpret that correctly, and we would be willing to front that cost and not have the authority do that. So thank you again. Again, my last request is not as a property owner, but requesting that the authority follow the court order and put the level where it needs to be as measured at the dam. And we'll be looking forward to the November 1st meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Authority member comments? Anyone? Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me, Chris.
Good morning. Thank you again, Chris Lund. I just wanted to reiterate that it appears to me that the difference that we're talking about in terms of how to maintain the level at the dam is a different interpretation of how it's being measured and maintained by the Dam Authority by referencing what is generally being interpreted as the average lake level, which you're assuming is as measured in the narrows. But again, the way we're interpreting the court order, and I know it was mentioned that the court order does talk about lake levels, but it doesn't say that to maintain the level, of the 589.21 is measured from the average of the lake level. It specifically says these levels shall be maintained at the site of the dam located in the village of Leland, county of Leelanau, the state of Michigan. I don't know how much clearer it can be that it's the flowing level that's happening at the dam is what's supposed to be maintained at the 589.21. Not the average lake level, which may have some correlation to the narrows. It's what's actively flowing at the level of the dam as maintained in the village of Leland. So I think it's just a difference in interpretation of where to take that measurement. Should it be the average of the lake, or should it be the true flow of the height as measured at the dam? And again, I'm not an attorney, but I've had different attorneys look at this, and this line here is very clear. These levels shall be maintained, not just blocked for 2 hours, not for 2 weeks, not for 2 years, to check that level. Maintain, what is the flow height of that river at the dam? And that's that 589.21. So I would just ask of you to just step back and actually read this order, and how do you individually interpret this? What level, what benchmark should be measured, and how should that be measured to interpret how that dam is maintained? Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Jerry Coleman, maintenance. I don't know, where you folks located? South Lake?
2458 North Manatee Trail.
South Lake?
They're probably on the south, the north.
Is that the property in question?
All my properties are in.
Is that in question, or is that where the water level is the biggest problem?
They're all in. They're all low.
Okay. I find it interesting, after all this time, that people come forward and all of a sudden we have low water. The water's not right. It doesn't happen overnight.
We've been calling and being a part of
Let Jerry speak, please.
Yeah, I'd like you to speak. My shot.
Well, he's saying
My shot. Anyway,
what we actually do.
long and short is, to maintain the lake level, there's 22 miles, and it all comes to a bottleneck. You're forcing water through or not through, and as the South Lake rises, when we get a lot of rain, then we got a lot of problems. And it doesn't seem to me that there's been a whole lot of noise being made over the past 40 years. Been hit and miss. People call up and say it's getting high down here. Mr. Morrow, further down South Lake, I understand that. People on the East Leland side complain the water's too high. Okay, because I'm just saying, all around it is trying to keep peace and harmony with everything. The court order states you maintain a lake, you maintain the lake level. A river is not a lake. A river is a river, a stream is a stream. By definition, they're all different. So I'm going by what's common sense, because I know, from my experience, what happens when you try maintaining down here at 9 feet, down up at where you let the water out. You get an inch of rain or two, and you start flooding out the south end, way south. I know this from experience, and I don't know if there's an underlying reason why it's just become an issue now. People build in a swamp, a runoff area. My grandfather, they get stuck down there back in the day. It was a swamp. We all know that. John, I'm defending the point that common sense runs the show. Mother Nature runs the show. We cannot, as human beings, dictate completely what the ebb and flow is water. 20-some miles, good luck. It's a good system, it's the best we have right now, but to fine tune it to the point of by inches and it's been higher than low, 6 inches here, unless the bridge is dropped, like, well, no, but that's the most common sense area, give an indicator of the lake itself, not where you let the water out of the bathtub. That's foolish. So I maintain the lake level at the Leland Dam. I try to maintain the lake level, not the river level, the lake level. But to get, you can maintain, that's my interpretation because I run it. Okay, do the best I can with that. If we want to raise it up, that's fine. But we're going to have a lot of people coming, putting in their information, what they feel it should be. Some people want beach, some people want water for their doorstep. We all know that. So I'm trying to be common sense with this and try to work it, try to stay within a couple inches, 20-some miles length into a bottleneck. And yeah, we talked about dredging. This is a big issue. 30-some years ago, they dredged the narrows, right?
40.
Is 40 now? Never touched the mouth of the Leland River, ever. I grew up in the lake. It's always been an issue. But it costs money, we're going to go with the cuttings. Okay, it's considered hazardous material when they pull it off the bottom. So, with respect to you folks, I understand, and I really do. Okay? I'm just trying to do the best I can with what I'm given. And if we can make changes and keep peace and harmony, great, I'm happy. I really am. It's nothing against you. It's so frustrating to me because everything's fine, and then as soon as we get rain, or we don't get rain. You know, it's either way. I like the challenge, and it is a challenge. Nothing's being done to try to harm you, okay? Just understand that. Just would love to make adjustments, but we can get these calibrations that you guys want to do, and at least work off of that, and then we can all have a discussion. We have to come up with a lake without harming Cedar, way down south, but the Cedar River is another thing down there too. Pristine Cedar River, I don't know how long that is, 8-10 miles or something to Cedar? 3 miles, I'm not sure. I don't need, so anyway, that's another issue. Water builds up there and can't get out either. So is that something that we as a county need to look at too? Would help, I don't know. Because that floods out down there right away. Maybe that's because water can't, it's backed up there. I don't know. But I'm just, it's frustrating, but it's challenging, and I like it. But when people come to harm's way or there's issues, then I'm starting to figure out what the heck we can do to make it better. I know you're trying to do that too, but I'm not just trying to schmooze anybody here. I'm just saying, I'm willing to do the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Mr. Chairman. Come on up, state your name and make your comment.
Hello, my name is Gene Mace. I own in Leland, and I rent a slip at the Leland Mercantile. There's 10 slips there, and four of the boats are actually taller than mine. So this is kind of a small wall, and I guess I understand there's a lot of much bigger issues. So I took the time to be here, so I say my piece. I took my boat under the bridge yesterday at the M22 bridge and took a picture of the mark, and it looks to be about ½ inch lower than the prescribed level from the quarter. And at that level, ½ inch lower than the prescribed level, I have 6 inches of clearance. I've got a picture of it if you want to see it. 6 inches of clearance on my windshield of my boat. So if the discussion is 1 to 2 inches higher, fine. If it's 6 inches higher, it effectively neutralizes those slips at the mercantile. And so I just thought you all should know that in terms of levels of raising, if there's a decision to permanently raise it, that there'll be 10 slips at the mercantile, which will not be usable. It's raised more than just an inch or two. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Authority member comments?
I have no comments. No comment. I'm just glad the public comes out and lets us know what they see.
It was a good discussion all the way around.
I think so.
I think we're headed in the right direction, and we have a motion in play. I'll go talk to Chet and see if it has to go to board or if it's in the budget. And that'll determine timing of this whole thing. Comment, John?
Jerry, you're doing a good job at trying to maintain this over the 30 or 40 years. We added these sensors to just give us another tool. But he's been doing it all manually, and we're gonna try to make it better. Have had a legal review done when there was 3 of us on the board as to where to measure the dam and how to do this, and what does it mean to measure it at the dam and all that. And we have that letter, and it was done by the county lawyer. And I know I brought it in front of the board, but I'd be willing to bring it back. I also inquired of what it would take to move where we measure it at. And it was like going against an avalanche. This is a circuit court order, and I talked to what it takes. To get that circuit court order took a long time. The Lake Association was formed about then, and they were gonna sue the county. There was a lawsuit involved, as the guys aren't maintaining this lake level, and you guys own the dam, and who owned it? Well, at that time, there was different people that owned it, and they said, good, I'm gonna tear it out. And then the county bought it for $1 and all that stuff, and there was a whole bunch of other things that went on, and that's when the circuit court order came about. And to change that, which would really be great, to measure it at a different location, get out of all that. And I got a letter that states, you guys want to take it on, it's going to be a chore to go petition to a circuit court something that was done a long time ago. Anyway, I got that letter.
Any other comments? I'd entertain a motion.
So move.
It's been moved to adjourn. A second is here, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll see you on the 1st at 10:30.